She once said she was born with a frown. She also admitted that she always felt like she was going to fail. That feeling stayed with her, even after she became one of the few women in Hollywood trusted with major studio films, even after Big crossed the $100 million mark in the United States, and even after A League of Their Own gave American movie culture one of its most quoted lines. For Penny Marshall, success and doubt lived side by side. That tension sits at the center of her story. The public knew the sitcom star. The industry learned, sometimes reluctantly, that she could direct hit films. Beneath both was the same private worry, that she did not belong, that she was not built for authority, that one day someone would decide she was in the wrong chair. She kept walking into those rooms anyway. She did not arrive in Los Angeles with a grand plan. She did not spend years trying to look like a born director. She moved west because family was there. She took the jobs that opened up. She learned on sets where she was already working. When bigger chances came, she took them before doubt could stop her. Fear never left. It stayed with her. She kept working through it, and in doing so, she changed what a woman director could look like in mainstream American film. Penny Marshall was born Carol. Penny Marshall on October 15, 1943, in the Bronx. Her family lived close to performance, though not in the glossy way people often imagine when they hear show business. Her mother, Marjorie, ran a tap dance school. Her father, Tony Marshall, worked as an industrial filmmaker before producing television. In that house, entertainment was labor. It had routines, costs, schedules, and practical value. It was work that had to get done. That background shaped how Penny understood the business long before Hollywood entered the picture. She was not raised to view stardom as something distant or glamorous. She grew up around people who made things, staged things, filmed things, and then moved on to the next job. Her older brother, Gary Marshall, would become one of television's defining comedy producers, while her sister, Ronnie Hallen, built a career in television production. The family was full of working professionals before the public knew any of their names. As a child, Penny danced in her mother's troupe and appeared on television early, including spots connected to variety programming. It gave her stage experience long before she had any clear ambition to build a career from it. She later talked about those years with very little mythology. They did not make her feel destined. They simply made performance familiar. There was another side to her, one that stayed with her for life. She loved sports. She followed games with the loyalty of a fan, not the polite interest of someone making conversation. She also carried herself more like a scrappy neighborhood kid than a polished future actress. That streak never disappeared. Years later, it would shape what drew her as a filmmaker and how she recognized value in stories the industry often treated as secondary. She attended the University of New Mexico, where she studied psychology and mathematics. During that period, she married Michael Henry. In 1964, she gave birth to her daughter, Tracy. School gave way to work and responsibility. She held regular jobs, including secretarial work and teaching dance. At that stage, her life did not resemble a Hollywood ascent. It looked like what it was, a young mother making practical choices while trying to support a child. The move that changed the rest of her career came in 1967, when she relocated to Los Angeles. Gary was already working in television there. The move put her closer to family and closer to an industry she understood from the edges, even if she had not mapped out a future inside it. She did not arrive with a manifesto. She arrived with proximity, timing, and enough experience to recognize work when it appeared. Once she was in Los Angeles, acting became less abstract. She took classes, began auditioning, and found work in television. One of her important early roles came on The Odd Couple, where she played Oscar Madison's secretary, Myrna Turner. It was not the kind of part that turned someone into a household name, but it gave her something more useful at that stage: repetition, rhythm, and experience inside a sharply timed sitcom machine. Those early roles gave her real training. Supporting parts teach discipline fast. How to land a line cleanly, how to hold a reaction without pushing too hard, how to read a room full of actors, and how to feel the rhythm a director is trying to build. Marshall learned all of that from the insania. The ease she later had with comic actors came out of those years spent watching timing click into place and watching scenes fall flat when it didn't. Her brother's presence in television naturally raised questions, and Penny knew that. She addressed it herself. In a 1988 interview, she said people assumed she got parts because Gary was being nice, and that at first she may have wondered the same thing. She also repeated the line he gave her when the subject finally came to a head. He told her he was not giving her work out of kindness. He was not that nice. The line was funny, but it also carried the point she needed. She was there because she could do the job. That question of earned versus granted opportunity stayed close to her for years. It helps explain how alert she was to dismissal and why doubt clung so tightly even after she had a body of work no one could laugh off. Early access had come through family connections, but what kept her working was competence. The record on that is not subtle. By the mid-1970s, television was about to turn her into a national figure. That stretch in television taught her how a set really works. Actors in supporting roles often see more than the stars do. They catch the moments when a director hesitates, they learn which notes help, and they see which ones only make a performer tighten up. They also watch writers adjust when a joke dies in rehearsal. Marshall took all of that in before anyone knew her as a director, and it gave her a practical education no formal status could have given her. That practical education also shaped how crews responded to her later. She did not come into film directing with the posture of someone trying to impress people with technical theater. She had spent years around working sets. She knew the speed of production and the small humiliations that can throw a day off track. Actors often trusted her because she spoke their language without turning it into a performance. That trust became one of her strongest tools, especially in films that depended on tonal balance rather than spectacle. A League of Their Own let its women feel fully human. They are competitive, petty, funny, proud, jealous, exhausted, and ambitious, without being flattened into symbols. Marshall directs them as teammates and rivals, not as polished examples of uplift. She gives them humor, friction, and bruised egos. Because of that, the comedy lands cleanly and the emotion carries more weight. There is also something revealing in the way her legacy settled after her death. People did not remember her only as the woman who crossed a financial barrier, though that part remains historic. They remembered the feeling of her films, the looseness she could get from actors, the way she could make a mainstream audience care about characters who were not written as polished heroes. That kind of memory is harder to measure than grosses or nominations, but it is often what lasts longest inside the culture. Laverne and Shirley premiered on ABC on January 27, 1976. The show grew out of a guest appearance Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams made on Happy Days, then quickly became its own force. Set around two working-class women in Milwaukee, the series centered on Laverne DeFazio and Shirley Feeney, roommates who worked bottling beer and tried to build lives that felt larger than the spaces available to them. The premise sounded simple. The response was enormous. The show did not merely become popular. It became the highest-rated program on American television for the 1977 to 78 and 1978 to 79 seasons. In an era before audiences were fractured across endless platforms, that meant something huge. Laverne and Shirley entered the shared weekly language of American TV, with viewers across the country following them every week. Marshall's performance helped make that happen. Laverne was blunt, restless, physical, and funny without being polished. Penny's dance background and instinct for movement fed directly into the character's comedy. A stumble, a double take, a shift in posture. She knew how to turn the body into part of the joke. The show's humor often depended on that exact kind of control. The industry noticed. She received 3 consecutive Golden Globe nominations for her work on the series. Viewers had already made the show a hit, but the nominations made clear that her performance was not being dismissed as a purely commercial success. It had weight inside the industry, too. More important for what came next, she started directing while she was still starring in the show. Across its run, she directed 4 episodes. That shift did not arrive with a dramatic public rebrand. She was already trusted on the set. She already knew the pace, the actors, the pressure points, the mechanics. Directing inside that environment gave her a place to test the part of herself that had begun to lean toward the camera instead of staying in front of it. That is where the transition really begins. Not with a bold declaration that she was leaving acting behind, and not with a studio announcing the arrival of a new female auteur. It begins with a working actress on a hit sitcom taking the chance to direct episodes in a space where she had earned authority. She was building the next version of her career before most people knew she was doing it. When Marshall got her first feature, the opportunity did not arrive under ideal circumstances. Jumpin' Jack Flash was already in motion when 20th Century Fox needed a new director. She stepped in and took over a film already carrying the pressures of a studio production and a star vehicle for Whoopi Goldberg. It was her first feature. It also gave her no soft landing. The leap from television to film hit hard. A feature set runs on a different scale. More money, more moving pieces, more pressure around decisions that have to hold across a much larger frame. Marshall did not present herself as some fearless commander suddenly in total control. In the years around Big, she was open about how unsure she could feel, how often she worried she was getting it wrong, and how easily anxiety could rush in even while everyone around her expected leadership. That tension was present from the start. She could do the work. She also doubted herself while doing it. Both things were true. Jumpin' Jack Flash was not a runaway triumph, but it did real business. It brought in roughly $25.6 million in domestic box office, and it gave the industry something more important than a perfect first score. It gave her proof of completion. She had taken over a studio feature in a difficult spot and delivered it. That changes how the next conversation goes. There had already been signs she was edging toward that level. Before Jumpin' Jack Flash, she had been attached to direct Peggy Sue Got Married, then lost the job after creative differences. Even that near miss tells you something. She was already being considered for projects beyond television, even before the resume looked secure enough to quiet everyone who doubted the idea. What Jumpin' Jack Flash really did was make the next step possible. It turned her from someone with television directing credits into someone the studios could no longer call untested. In Hollywood, that distinction is often the whole gate. Big was the film that moved her into a different category. It also showed how much maneuvering women directors still had to do to get ordinary things done. Marshall wanted Tom Hanks for the lead. He was not immediately on board. Other actors passed too. Then Robert De Niro expressed interest, and the temperature around the project shifted. Once De Niro's name entered the conversation, actors who had stepped back started to look again. Hanks reconsidered. Marshall later spoke openly about that sequence. The point is hard to miss. Even after she had already directed a studio feature, the project still gained momentum through the borrowed legitimacy of a major male star. Once she had the cast she wanted, the film became hers to shape. Big arrived in 1988 and connected fast. It was funny, commercial, emotionally grounded, and built around a Tom Hanks performance that held on to innocence without turning childish. The movie earned about $115 million domestically and more than $151 million worldwide. In the United States, it became the first film directed by a woman to cross the $100 million mark. That milestone changed the conversation in a way the business could no longer sidestep. For years, Hollywood had treated the idea of a woman directing a major mainstream hit as something unproven. Big ended that uncertainty. Now there was a hard number on the board, and Penny Marshall was the one who put it there. Success did not erase the culture around her. The larger industry still offered women far fewer directing opportunities than men, and that imbalance remained severe long after Big. But the film gave her the kind of hard commercial evidence that even skeptical executives could not wave away. It changed how her name read in trade conversations. She was no longer a curiosity from television who had tried directing. She was a proven box office director. For a woman in Hollywood in the late 1980s, that kind of breakthrough carried real weight. It changed what could be argued and what could no longer be denied. After Big, Marshall could have tried to repeat herself with something lighter and easier to package. Instead, she directed Awakenings, released in 1990. Based on Oliver Sacks's memoir, the film followed a neurologist, played by Robin Williams, and a patient, played by Robert De Niro, who briefly emerges from a long catatonic state after treatment with L-Dopa. It was quieter than Big, more restrained, and emotionally riskier in a different way. The film depended on patience, tone, and trust in performance. It worked. Awakenings earned just over $52 million domestically, which was strong for a prestige drama of that kind. More important, it reached the Academy's top tier. At the 63rd Academy Awards, it received 3 nominations: Best Picture, Best Actor for De Niro, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Marshall herself was absent from the Best Director lineup. That omission tells you something important about how her career was received. By that point, she had already directed a massive commercial hit, and now she had directed a Best Picture nominee. The Academy's broader voting body recognized the film as one of the year's major works. The directing branch did not place her among its nominees. The split is revealing. Her films could enter the room. Her name still met resistance once the highest directorial honors were being assigned. What stands out is how clear the pattern had become. Marshall had already done the work that should have settled the question of whether she belonged. She had a major commercial hit behind her. She had a critically respected film in the Best Picture race. Even then, the recognition stopped short of naming her among the year's top directors. That is one of the clearest patterns in her career. The accomplishments kept arriving. Formal recognition often lagged behind them. A League of Their Own came from a subject that clicked with her immediately. She was drawn to the history of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, the wartime league that gave women a professional stage from 1943 to 1954. That story sat right at the intersection of several things that had always lived inside her: her love of sports, her instinct for underdog stories, and her awareness that American culture often remembers men's institutions first and asks questions later. Released in 1992, the film took a real piece of sports history and turned it into a mainstream studio hit without flattening the women at its center. It had humor, conflict, bitterness, affection, and competition. It also had reach. The movie earned about $107.5 million domestically and around $132.4 million worldwide, making it Marshall's second film to clear the $100 million mark in the United States. That alone would have made it an important chapter in her career. The film also went further than numbers. One line from Tom Hanks's performance as manager Jimmy Dugan, "There's no crying in baseball," entered the American movie canon so completely that the American Film Institute later ranked it at number 54 on its list of the greatest movie quotes. The line stayed. So did the film. In 2012, the Library of Congress selected A League of Their Own for the National Film Registry. That distinction applies to the film as a whole, not to a single scene or one famous quote. The registry reserves space for works judged culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant enough to preserve as part of the national record. Marshall's film earned that place. The choice says something larger about what she had done. She had taken a story centered on women athletes, a subject long treated as marginal, and made a film popular enough to travel widely, durable enough to stay quoted, and substantial enough to be preserved. That is not an accident of nostalgia. It is a measure of lasting cultural weight. By the early 1990s, Penny Marshall had directed 2 U.S. box office hits, over $100 million, and 1 Best Picture nominee. At that point, the argument about whether she belonged behind the camera was finished, whether the industry had fully admitted it or not. The films that followed did not all hit at the same commercial level. Renaissance Man, The Preacher's Wife, and Riding in Cars with Boys each found audiences, but none altered the industry the way Big and A-League of Their Own had. That is partly about the changing market. Marshall herself later said that the kind of mid-range, character-driven studio pictures she liked to make were getting harder to mount. Hollywood was moving toward projects that sold more easily across international markets and franchise logic. Her instincts had been shaped in a different era. Her personal life ran alongside all of this with its own long arcs. She married Rob Reiner in 1971, and he adopted Tracy, her daughter from her first marriage. They divorced in 1981, but their bond did not collapse into public bitterness. They remained connected through family, work, and a shared history that did not disappear when the marriage ended. Another lasting bond came through Carrie Fisher. Their friendship became one of the most enduring relationships in Marshall's adult life. They began holding joint birthday parties in the early 1980s, and those gatherings became a standing ritual for years. When Marshall published her memoir, My Mother Was Nuts, she dedicated it to Fisher. The dedication was brief, but the point behind it was not. Fisher was central to her life. Recognition came in forms both formal and incomplete. In 1991, Women in Film honored her with a Crystal Award, placing her among women whose work had helped expand the space available to women in the industry. That same year sat close to the Academy snub for Awakenings. The pairing captures a lot. Her peers in one arena recognized exactly what she represented. Another major institution still stopped short. Her longtime producer, James L. Brooks, saw through the mismatch between her outward insecurity and her actual authority. He said she had an iron will, and the phrase fits because it explains the contradiction people often missed. She could sound doubtful, apologetic, or self-effacing, then turn around and hold her ground where it counted. She was not loud about power. She still used it. Marshall died on December 17, 2018, at her home in the Hollywood Hills. She was 75. Her family said the cause was complications from diabetes. The end of her life brought a flood of tributes that returned to the same broad outline. The sitcom star, the barrier-breaking director, the woman who made room for others by simply refusing to leave the space she had earned. That outline is true. It also leaves out the private engine that ran under almost all of it. She was a worrier. She said so herself. She worried when the films were opening. She worried about leadership. She worried about being enough. Success did not cure that instinct. It traveled with her. She kept the Bronx in her voice, the fan in her instincts, and the worker's practicality in her method. Even at her biggest, she gave the impression of someone clocking in, doing work, and hoping things held. Penny Marshall never needed the language of self-mythology to secure her place in history. She did not talk like someone polishing a legend. She talked like someone who still doubted the assignment, even after she had already done the job. That is part of what makes her story hold. She did not conquer insecurity and then rise. She rose while carrying it. She worked through the noise in her own head and left a record that is harder than doubt, a hit sitcom that dominated American television, a feature that broke a domestic box office barrier for women directors, a Best Picture nominee, sports film preserved by the Library of Congress, a line of dialogue the culture never let go. Her career also exposes the limits of institutional approval. She could become the first woman to direct a U.S. box office hit over $100 million and still not walk into equal treatment. She could direct a Best Picture nominee and still be left out of the directing category. The work kept outrunning the recognition. The work lasted anyway. What remains, finally, is not a neat lesson about confidence. It is a clearer and more human truth. Penny Marshall did not wait to feel fully ready. She did not need to become fearless before the work counted. She kept moving, even when the old fear stayed close, and in that movement she opened doors that had been kept shut for far too long. History often remembers the milestones first. With Penny Marshall, it is worth remembering the pressure she carried while reaching them. She worried. She doubted. She kept going. And the record she left behind is stronger because it was built that way.